And then one day I finally heard myself saying out loud, once again for the umpteenth time, I have no marketable skills. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I telling myself over and over again, repeatedly and literally? And how is that going into my subconscious? And then how is that manifesting itself in my life? Well, it was manifesting itself quite well. Hello, Thorn here, back with more on mindset. How does mindset really work? What is it? What does changing our mind to change our lives really mean? Well, in my Law of Attraction is a Lie video, I talked about how that is only a partial truth because we co-create with the cosmos. We don't manifest in a vacuum. And we can't just change our minds in a vacuum either. We can't just go to sleep one night thinking, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to become a best-selling author. That's not how it works. Being a best-selling author is out of our control. What is in our control is to go to sleep at night and say, tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write. Or I'm going to go for a walk and do dictation into my recorder. That is what mindset is. I can't control the bestseller lists, although there are ways to game the system, but that's not what this video is about. But what I can control is the fact that I have a desire to write and publish books and to share stories with the world. So what does that look like? What do I need to make a commitment to? And what sort of changes in my mind do I need to make to shift my habits toward the habit of creativity and regular, steady writing practice? That's changing my mind. That's manifestation of something I can control. So all the books behind me are things I've manifested because I had a desire and I figured out how to shift my mind and turn that intention into action. In magic, we call that enacting our will. So I enacted my will in the world, and we'll talk more about magic in another video. But back to manifestation. The other thing I wanted to say about it is, decades ago, I used to always say, I have no marketable skills. It's hard for me to make money. Now, in some ways at that time, I had already manifested the life I wanted. I knew I wanted to just work a bunch of odd jobs. I ran the gamut in all sorts of professions and side work because I knew I wanted time to create, whether that was dance, music, fiction, nonfiction, journalism, whatever. So I had manifested that. What I hadn't yet figured out how to manifest was to have more than enough money. I always had barely enough money. And then one day I finally heard myself saying out loud, once again for the umpteenth time, I have no marketable skills. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I telling myself over and over again, repeatedly and literally? And how is that going into my subconscious? And then how is that manifesting itself in my life? Well, it was manifesting itself quite well. I didn't have marketable skills until I stopped telling myself that. Once I stopped saying out loud, I have no marketable skills, my life began to change. All of my non-marketable skills ended up making me money from dance performances. I was in a dance troupe for a while. But the most astonishing thing is these non-marketable skills ended up making me a living as an author and as someone who traveled the entire world teaching self-development, spiritual practice, and magical practice. I have taught from Sao Paulo, Brazil, to Chicago in the US, to Frankfurt in Germany, and many, many more places besides. And I made a living at it for a long time. That's the change in mindset I needed to make. Now, saying I have no marketable skills, yes, it's rooted in the fact that we live under capitalism, and it's hard to pay for a place to live and food on the table and to take care of ourselves and our family and our friends. But I'm setting that aside because we don't create in a vacuum. We don't change our mindset in a vacuum. So we live with the reality. And even as I work to shift the world to a place that feels more just and equitable, I acknowledge the forces around me that I'm shifting my mindset within. But I wanted to give you those couple of simple keys. If you're constantly talking down to yourself, if you're constantly saying negative things, give yourself a practice. For years, I have a practice, and I still have this practice, of the first thought in my head in the morning is something positive. Today I'm grateful. I'm breathing. My heart is working. I'm alive. It's another day. Some days the first thought is, I love you. It's not directed at any one thing. It's just directed at life itself, at the cosmos. So shifting that morning pattern away from negativity has been really fruitful and healing for me. And it helps me set up a template and a pattern so that I can choose to sit in meditation and do my breath work and center myself and align myself for the day and face including very real challenges. There have been times where my life has felt really, really hard. Dealing with a chronic illness, an autoimmune disorder, dealing with a traumatic brain injury and a viral brain injury, dealing with the weight of the world, climate crisis, economic insecurity, injustice. All those things can weigh really heavily on me. I'm that sort of person. But I need to not start my day there. If I start my day with gratitude and love, then I can approach some of these problems with gratitude and love and act out of gratitude and love. I want to help people because I'm grateful for my life and I have love for them and for the terrible conditions that they found themselves in or that they have been put under. Right? My impulse towards justice comes from gratitude and love. And that includes when it comes from a place of great anger or grief. I have a lot of anger. I used to allow myself to spiral into grief and become paralyzed. I don't do that anymore. I feel the anger. I express the anger. Then I let that anger be carried by my gratitude and my love and my sense of deep privilege and grace, and I act from there. So that's another facet of mindset, and it's a facet of mindset I don't think gets talked about often enough. And I hope you take this in and start talking about it more and sharing it with other people, because it's key. Mindset is not just about rise above your problems. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite of that. Mindset to me is about I'm facing my problems and I'm facing the problems of my friends and my community and the planet. And then I'm deciding to change my mind about what my abilities are and how I can act in the world. I am going to lend myself strength by changing my mindset. I'm going to cultivate effectiveness by changing my mindset. This is not what they call spiritual bypassing. This is not ignoring what is wrong. Just like I couldn't ignore what was wrong in my personal life, I had to make very deep, sometimes difficult changes. And I had to face sometimes very deep, difficult problems and issues in my life. But I did so by changing my mind while acknowledging the problems existed. I can't shift the problem by pretending it's gone. I can't wish climate crisis away. I have to start holding some multinational corporations accountable. I need to change my mind towards that. I need to shift my mind away from blaming my upbringing for all my problems and saying, here's how my upbringing shaped me. Here's how my childhood trauma plays itself out in my relationships and my decisions. How can I shift my mind and my attitude towards compassion and towards accountability for how I'm living now? That is life-changing, and it has been life-changing for me. If I'm always blaming my friends, I either need to look in the mirror or I need to choose to make new friends. That's a mindset shift. So mindset is both simpler and more complicated than we sometimes think. And yes, sorry, no pun intended. I want to expand my thinking around mindset. And I want to challenge you and invite you to expand your thinking around mindset. So take a breath into that. And what is one thought you can begin to change today? And what is that thought connected to in your life? Because remember, we don't change our minds, our behaviors, our emotions, our physical health in a vacuum. We co-create with everything around us. So I ask myself, what do I want to co-create? And then I ask myself, how? And what's the first thought that's going to help me do that? Thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate you. I appreciate all my Patreon supporters who make these videos and so much of my creativity possible. And if you're interested in more videos like this, check them out.